Alright, what's going on guys, and welcome back. So when it comes to monster taming games, a very common theme is the idea of monster or creature collection, which is probably the most prevalent subcategory within the monster taming genre. This encompasses your games like Pokemon, where there is a large focus on catching, breeding, or recruiting a plethora of monsters in order to fill some sort of compendium like a Pokedex, or to just simply create the strongest team. While there are several monster taming games that don't involve collection, like many of the battle-only sims or monster raising title, my favorite type of monster taming game to play has always been these sort of monster collection games where you go on a journey and get access to a ton of different monsters to pick and choose and then customize your team. This just allows for such a rich and engaging gameplay loop and creates a situation where everyone has a unique experience with these games, since team building can be so intricate. Now, the goal of today's video is to get more people that are maybe new to the monster taming scene more familiar with some of the games in it. While putting this video together, it kind of feels like a catalog of many of the games I've covered extensively in the past, and I've got to say I've been getting a bit nostalgic while doing so, so even if you're a long-term fan of the channel, you might still find this video nostalgic as well. Anyways, all of this is to say today we are going to be going over 10 new and upcoming monster taming games that specifically feature creature collection as a chief focus. So don't forget to subscribe for more daily monster taming content, and let's dive in. Alright, to kick things off, we got Nexomon 1 and the sequel, Nexomon Extinction, which are both extremely solid monster taming RPGs, and also happen to be games that any long-term fan of the channel could see coming a mile away. The games both feature their own iconic art style, with the monsters and characters being hand-drawn in HD rather than your typical pixel art, though some people have criticized it for looking like a mobile game. However, the fact of the matter is that Nexomon 1 does originate from mobile games, so that kind of makes sense. Either way, these games feature a story-driven narrative that doesn't take itself too seriously, but still manages to create some epic moments, and it features a Pokemon-esque battle system, albeit one that definitely doesn't have as much nuance, as a lot of the Nexomon are monotyped and the stat distribution can feel sameish at times, but there are over 300 Nexomon in the first game and well over 400 in the second, so there's definitely a lot of monster collection to be had here. That being said, both games provide a fun and relaxing monster taming experience, with Nexomon Extinction even featuring a semi-open world that you can explore and level scaling as well. I've done a plethora of videos on both of these games, and honestly, they're some of my favorite monster taming games of all time, so even if you think that you're tired of turn-based RPGs or you don't typically like 2D games, I still highly recommend giving them a shot. They're a lot of fun. Another really good game that we covered quite extensively when it came out is Monster Sanctuary, which is a title that I've seen get a bit of an uptick in interest within the last couple years. But essentially, Monster Sanctuary is a monster taming Metroidvania where you partake in these 3-on-3 turn-based battles with a combat system that is quite unique in that you have to build up buffs and debuffs and combos and stuff like that. You need to strategize in order to achieve success. It's not just pick your strongest move and win. The game features over 100 monsters, and instead of your typical capture mechanic, monsters you defeat have a chance to drop an egg based on how proficient you are in defeating them, with higher proficiency granting more stars, which leads to a higher chance of success. Then you can hatch these eggs and utilize the monsters accordingly. Every monster has its own skill tree, which is also something that breaks the mold from the typical level up system we see in most monster taming games, and Monster Sanctuary also has New Game Plus, customization, and randomization settings, which by the way is something that the console and PC versions of Nexomon Extinction had as well, and they even had a free DLC for this game, which is quite cool. The development team is actually working on a new game as well, which I will be covering more of in the future, so stay tuned for that. Moonstone Island is a little bit different than most of the monster taming games we cover, in that it's actually a deck building game. However, in this game you do collect monsters who, instead of having level up learn sets and skill sets, actually have cards associated with them. So instead of something like Yu-Gi-Oh where it's just a card collector that have monsters on them, Moonstone Island, you have the monsters themselves, which are real and tangible, but their learn sets are actually comprised of cards, which is actually kind of cool. That being said, Moonstone Island is kind of a mashup between a Stardew Valley esque farming and social sim, and a procedurally generated open world monster taming RPG, again with deck building elements. In this game, you build a base, explore a wide variety of dungeons and seasonal temples, interact with the various NPCs and characters littered throughout the major city, and a whole lot more. The game doesn't have quite as many monsters as your typical monster taming game, with it having somewhere around 80 after the free DLC update. However, each monster has a lot of intricacy behind it with the card system, and the game features a lot of content outside of your standard monster taming game in terms of gameplay. The game never makes you feel like you're missing out on anything or that it's lacking either. Moonstone Island is a perfect game for the casual monster taming experience, where you can explore the world at your own leisure with a light story, maybe do some farming and stuff like that. Now, while the major focus of this video is discussing monster taming games that are already out, I did also want to highlight at least a couple games that are upcoming so that you guys who are new to the genre know that there are still games in the works and that the future of the genre will come with it a lot of excitement. That being said, Kindred Fates is one of the earliest pillars, I guess you could say, of this YouTube channel. I started making a lot of speculation content for the game way back in the day when my channel had like less than 1,000 subscribers. Kindred Fates had a Kickstarter that raised over $700,000 USD and presents itself as an open world monster taming action RPG where you can collect and utilize kinfolk in real-time combat where you take direct control over the monsters. The game takes place in a world where a mysterious fog has been turning the kinfolk mad, and it's your job to uncover the secrets behind it. The game has a huge lineup of features planned as well, including, like I said, real-time combat, 158 kinfolk, which will all be balanced and accounted for so that pre-evolutions don't necessarily get stomped by their further evolutions, but instead just play differently. It has a type system that affects playstyle and not just multipliers, bonding mechanics that allow each kinfolk to have its own unique personality, a Dark Souls-esque mechanic where if your kinfolk dies, you kind of have to pick up its soul before you double grave or run out of time. Every kinfolk has branched evolution, meaning that instead of just evolving in a straight line, there will be tons of evolutions that sort of branch off from each other. They're going to have a turn-based mode, which will add a lot of replayability to the game, online PvP, and a lot of stuff like that. The game has unfortunately received multiple delays, and we don't really have a concrete release window as of now. I'm personally not a huge fan of the combat so far in the PvP arena, but there is the beta coming out, so we'll have to wait and see how that ends up playing. I just feel like the ranged attackers are kind of OP, but we'll see what happens. Now, there has been a lot of controversy surrounding Temtem lately. However, it actually is a solid 3D monster taming game as far as gameplay and visuals are concerned, and despite some of the systems in the endgame and PvP feeling a little bit grindy, there's no denying that if you just play Temtem as a single player game, the game is still fun. Temtem features over 160 monsters that you can collect and utilize, and is very similar to Pokemon in several aspects, such as a player needing to conquer 8 dojos and thwart Clan Belsodo, just like you'd conquer gyms and beat Team Rocket. They also have 4 arch tamers and an evil clan leader and all that stuff, so it's very one-to-one in a lot of regards. That being said, while Temtem was mostly marketed as an MMO, the developers have gone on to state that no, it's an MMO light, so if you're expecting a lot of crazy post-game updates and stuff like that, you will unfortunately be disappointed. But if you are looking for a game that just has an RNG-free battle system, the ability to play in co-op, about 50 to 60 hours of story content, online PvP, raids, a Battle Frontier-esque island, albeit it's kind of bogged down by forcing the player to use in-game currency to play it multiple times per week, this might just be the game for you. I still really did enjoy my time with the game and have beaten through the story twice, and while I have my criticisms about it, I still had fun. Temtem was a game that actually got me started on this monster taming journey and always will have a special place for that. Another one of the first games I covered was Coromon. In fact, it was the second game I ever made a video on that was in the non-Pokemon monster taming sphere, with Temtem being the first. Coromon is a Pokemon-esque game that takes clear inspirations from Generation 4 and 5 with some really beautiful animated pixel art and a unique story-driven narrative of its own. In this game, you play as a new recruit to Lux Solus, an organization of Coromon tamers that are dedicated to preserving the region of Welwa, I think is how you pronounce it, and are tasked with taking the essence of 6 different Titans due to an ominous alien threat invading the planet. The Titans themselves act as a major, almost Final Fantasy-esque boss, and defeating each of them is the only way to prove yourself worthy for said essence. The game also features a unique take on the shiny system, basically having recolors for different Coromon based on their potential, with perfect Coromon having their own hue, the above ones having their own hue as well. These are the potents, and then obviously standard ones just look standard. I'm telling you guys, this game is seriously a lot of fun and features around 120 coromon that you can utilize in battle, randomizer and Nuzlocke settings, a few minigames, online PvP, and more. This is one of my most highly recommended titles if you're a fan of Pokemon. Please make sure to check it out. Now, if you're looking for a game that's a little bit different and sort of feels like a cross between classic Digimon World and Pokemon, then I recommend checking out Anode Heart, a game that does just that. Anode Heart is a pixel art monster taming game where essentially the goal of the game is to recruit a bunch of characters to your hub area and basically survive the internet apocalypse by collecting and utilizing mysterious creatures known as Tama in combat. Honestly, even though I've played the game, it's one of those things that you just need to play to understand. It's a lot of fun and I do highly recommend checking it out. Another really cool monster taming game that breaks the mold from what is typically expected is Cerealum Ultimate, a dungeon crawling title where your character explores dozens of randomly generated realms that can be looted, and in doing so you'll be able to collect the essence of enemy monsters in order to create your own collection of powerful beasts. The game features a class system which also gives you additional bonuses based on the class you choose, over 1,000 monsters to collect and utilize, a plethora of spell gems that you can equip to said monsters to give them more customization. It's got 6-on-6 battles and even a fusion mechanic. The game is part of a series of titles. There's actually 4 main installments. There's Cerealum 1, 2, and 3, and then Ultimate's the 4th one, and it's honestly crazy in terms of content. Definitely consider checking this one out as well. The developer's a really cool guy, very successful Kickstarter campaign, so yeah. Now, it wouldn't be a proper list without mentioning one of my favorite monster taming games of all time, that being Cassette Beasts, an open-world pixel art RPG with a unique twist on turn-based combat and an algorithmic fusion system to boot. The game features over 100 monsters that you can record, collect, and transform into, a shiny system that completely mixes up the monsters' types and movesets, a bunch of crazy combinations, I'm talking over 10,000 possible fusion combos here, and a whole lot more. This again is one of my favorite monster taming / creature collecting titles, so if you're tired of games that feel maybe a little bit too similar to Pokemon but still want that pixel art vibe, definitely check this one out. It's a huge breath of fresh air. Finally, last but not least, let's talk about an upcoming monster taming game that I'm still pretty skeptical about, but you guys have been talking about it quite a bit, and that is Azure Promelia, a game inspired by, I'm assuming, Genshin Impact in terms of art, that allows you to collect and utilize a slew of monsters for both world traversal and combat, and is comprised of waifu characters exclusively, so take with that what you will. That being said, this is an upcoming gacha game apparently, hence my skepticism, but graphically it does look pretty good, and the gameplay looks interesting enough. Just do keep in mind it was just announced. We don't have a whole lot of information on it. I'll keep you guys up to date when more information becomes available, but the developers were also the ones that created Azure Lane, and a lot of people say that's a good game, so we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, guys, those were 10 new and upcoming monster taming games that feature creature collection as a chief focus, and I really do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, if you're a long-term fan of the channel, there's a chance you already know most of these games, but going through a lot of them was definitely a trip down memory lane, and it's always nice to look back and see what amazing games the genre has brought forth, and I'm really excited to see what's next. If you guys did enjoy the video and you're new to monster taming, or maybe you've been around here before, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. We're getting closer and closer to that 90k milestone, and the bigger this channel gets, the more we can sort of push monster taming further, so become part of the community and let's spread the word together. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Just wanted to quickly say special thanks to my supporters, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Candy Morency, Tragsoft, and Nemo, and we'll see you next time. Peace.